Hi there, come on in. This is the Warp Plastic Scale Modeling channel. My name is Andy, and I'll be the host for the duration of your visit. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, I guess I should start with a little bit about myself. I've been building models since I was about 5 years old. So, unless I just had a really harsh childhood and aged prematurely, I have been doing it for a good many years. I've learned a thing or two that hopefully I can pass on here. Maybe somebody else out there can learn a thing or two. But obviously, I'm also still learning about it, which is part of the fun. Now, in 2001, I did a website design course, and as part of that, I started my own personal little website called, you guessed it, Work Plastic. It's just a showcase of my models and also some rantings and ramblings and general nonsense. I'll stick a link into that somewhere if I can figure out how to do that, and maybe you can have a look. Now, in 2010, I started my own business called Thunderbird Models, one of the sponsors of this channel. So, yes, I am my own sponsor. I'm also my own grandpa, but we won't get into that right now. Now, I've been thinking about getting into YouTube videos for quite some time, partly to promote Thunderbird Models, but also just to have a bit of fun and see what I can and can't do with the medium. I guess that remains to be seen. But I should probably start out with a bit of a warning and an apology in advance, and that is that I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. Never made a video before, never had to edit one before. I've been in a few, but never done it myself. So it's going to be a big learning experience for me, but I hope you'll bear with me, and hopefully I'll come up with something eventually that'll be mildly entertaining or maybe even educational. Maybe both. No, I doubt it, but we'll see. Anyway, for the past couple of months, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos to pick up some tips and techniques and see what works and what I think doesn't work. So, there are some things you won't see or hear on this channel. Number one being background music. With all due respect to the other video channels, I'm sure that gentle acoustic guitar music or the banging techno beat in the background sounded great to you, but after having to endure it for 30 or 40 minutes, I find it a little bit irritating. Sorry. Hey, I'm a former punk rock drummer. Why the hell would I like acoustic guitar music? Come on, get real. Now, number two, you're not going to watch 30 or 40 minutes of a pair of disembodied hands clipping parts off the sprue and sticking them together. It's okay now and then when you're demonstrating a technique, but to just continuously watch a pair of hands gesticulating madly over a kit box, no, it's a bit boring. And you're certainly not going to see a pair of black nitrile gloves clipping parts off the sprue and sticking them together. Yeah, it's just a bit creepy. It's like watching a serial killer build a model, isn't it? No. Thirdly, if you've come looking for the latest fads in finishing and weathering and painting, you've probably come to the wrong place. I'm kind of an old school guy. I don't go in for all these newfangled techniques, multiple coats of primer and paint, numerous washes and filters and modulation, whatever the that is. I don't do pre-shading. Sorry. Don't think it looks very good. Don't like crisscrossing dark lines all over a model airplane. It looks like something Salvador Dali would have built, doesn't it? And finally, I don't do box opening videos. Sorry. It seems a little bit childish to me, like a kid on Christmas morning. Oh boy, toys. That's fucking sad. Alrighty then. I think that's more than enough waffling on for me. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this premiere video from Warp Plastic. But first, a word from our sponsor. What? I didn't do it. Oh, sorry. Inspiring stuff. Thanks to our sponsor, Thunderbird Models, and also to our other sponsor, Chilliwack Slot Car Palace. Do check them out if you're ever in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. It's an excellent hobby shop. I'll put in a link to their Facebook page. Okay, As I mentioned, I've been watching quite a few videos in the last couple of months, seen a lot of different modelers, a lot of different techniques, but frankly, some of them make me wonder why they're doing what they're doing. So let's get into this premiere warp plastic video entitled 5 Things I See Other Modelers Doing That Make Me Question My Sanity. Or theirs.
Well, hold on, mister. What makes you so darn smart?
Well, my bearded friend, I just am. Get over it. Okay, here we go. Okay, this one has me a little bit perplexed. It would seem these days modelers have become rather obsessed with black primer. Everything gets coated in black first. Airframes, cockpits, wheel wells, engines, landing gear. Black! What the hell? I don't get it. I've even seen a build where the finish color was white and the modeler first painted in black. I mean, how many coats of white did you need to cover that up? I can't think of a worse color to cover than black. And yes, I know, technically speaking, black is not a color, but for the sake of simplicity, let's go with it in this context. Now, I suspect this trend may have come over from the armor crowd, some of whom will paint an entire AFE black and then use a dusting of the finish colors, leaving the black in the nooks and crannies. This creates a very, in my opinion, unrealistic and overdone shadow shading effect. The less said about that technique, the better. But for aircraft, no, I just don't see the point of it. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. You don't actually need primer at all. I know, that's heresy, right? Gotta have that primer. No, you don't. Primer's just another layer of paint that's going to cover up your recessed panel lines that we all love so much these days. You don't need it. Most modern hobby paints are really very good. They have good coverage, good color density, and good adhesion. You don't need a primer under them. It's just not necessary. As long as your plastic is clean and oil-free, your paints will stick just fine without primer. And let's face it, if your plastic isn't clean and oil-free, well, the primer ain't gonna stick either, is it? Makes sense. You're skeptical. I get that. Well, here's some examples. Airfix Spitfire Mark IX, Umbral enamels, polyscale acrylics, no primer. Dragon, Dornier 335, Umbral and Model Master enamels, polyscale acrylics, no primer. Tamiya P47, Model Master and Umbral enamels, Tamiya and Model Master acrylics, no primer. Academy Harvard, Umbral and extra color enamels, no primer. Edward, Albatross D5A, Umbral and extra color enamels, Tamiya and Gunzy acrylics, no primer. No primer. No primer. No primer. Now, of course, there will be exceptions to this rule. If you're building a resin model, for instance, paint doesn't stick so well to resin, so primer is probably a good idea. Or if your model comes in one of those horrible colors like red or orange or yellow, which are notorious for bleeding through your color coats, well, yeah, a primer sealer is probably a good idea again. Now, there are two that I use that are my go-to primers if I have to use one. Number one being this Duplicolor Sealer Primer. Because it's a sealer, it will block any tendencies for horrible colors like red and yellow to bleed through to your color coats. Yeah, it's very good for that. I know a lot of car modelers use it because car models do tend to come in horrible colors like that, so it is very useful for that. And because it's a fair size can, you get a pretty good bang for your buck. You get a lot of model coverage out of this. My other go-to primer, and this is especially useful if you're painting finish color white, hint hint, not black primer, is this one. This one, Tamiya, fine white primer. A little bit pricey. Can's a lot smaller. You don't get as much out of it, but it's pretty good. It works well for white, yellow, red finish colors. It's good stuff. But you notice, neither of these are black. Don't use black. It's just wrong. Okay? Let's talk glue. In these challenging times we live in, there are many, many types available for the construction of plastic model kits. And like most modelers, I have my favorites. Probably my most used glue is this one. Tamiya Extra Thin. It's great stuff. It's thin, as the name implies. Works on most plastics, not all of them, however. As an example, this SEF 16 I've been building didn't like this plastic at all. Oh, sir, didn't bond worth a bean. Whatever that means. But most plastics, it works really well. Funnily enough, it works great on Tamiya kits. Go figure. However, I see a lot of modelers, in fact, almost everybody on YouTube, it seems, is using this and its Gunzy equivalent in a most inefficient and wasteful manner. Why, whatever do you mean, Andy? Allow me to demonstrate. What I see almost everybody doing is this. Running the brush along the entire length of the seam. Well, the seam, not beside the seam like that, but down the seam. You get the idea. Not only is that a waste of glue and time, you also run the risk of putting too much glue in your joint. Remember, this stuff is extra thin. All you need to do is put a little dot every so often down your seam line. Capillary action will take care of the rest. Wick the glue along your seam and give you a nice, strong joint. Like this. Oops. I guess you actually have to put glue on there first. Let's try that again. Fuselage. Glue. There's actually glue on here this time. Little dot. Every half inch or so. Maybe 3/4 of an inch. No idea what that is in metric. Don't do metric, sorry. Probably should do the bottom too. Little dot. There we go. Let capillary action work its magic, and all going well, you get a nice strong joint. Excellent. Decals, or as many people like to say, decals, which I find just a little bit weird. It's like you're all from the South or something.
Y'all put me some decals on there. Ma'am.
Anyway, according to the dictionary, both pronunciations are correct. I've always said decals. I'll keep saying it that way. I'm sure the people that say decals will find that equally as weird, but hey-ho. Well, if you excuse me, I'm going to pedal my bike down to the record store. You-wee! But what I find really weird is something I've seen more than one person on YouTube doing. And it's this. You got your decal dipped in water, it's sliding around, it's ready to come off. And what are they doing? Waving it around in the air. What the hell? You're just asking for trouble doing this, okay? You're going to pick up dust from the atmosphere, or if you're like me, you'll drop it, and then what are you going to do then when the darn thing's coated in fluff? Yeah. Don't apply decals like this. This is not the way to do it. This is how you apply decals. First thing, a glossy finish is best. I have known people that use flat finishes and then just rely on copious amounts of setting solution, but I figure better safe than sorry. I find a glossy finish reduces the chance of air bubbles and silvering. So that's number one. Number two, I like to have really hot water. Not just lukewarm, hot. And the reason for that is that most decals will come off very quickly, and it also helps soften the decal and help them conform to the surface. So what I did is I made myself this little contraption just from brass rod soldered together. It's a, I think, cat food container, and then underneath I just have a little candle that heats the water up nicely. I've already done that. So let's get on with applying the decal. Pop that little sucker in there. There we go. Water's pretty warm still, so I don't need to wait long. 10 to 15 seconds is usually all you need, although some decals are a little more stubborn, so you need to give them extra time. And let's go that pretty good. Get that out of there. Stick it on your paper towel for a little bit. In the meantime, get your micro set or whatever you prefer to use. I use micro set. It's a mild softening solution and also a detergent that'll clean the surface. Get some of that on there. There we go. I'm just using an old paintbrush. Let's check our decal. Stop. There we go. Yep, that's sliding nicely. So, I'm not going to remove this in midair and wave it around. That's just not right. There we go. Slide the paper out from underneath it. There's our decal, all happy, in place. Get it into position. Now, a lot of people use cotton buds to squeeze the water out. Well, that probably works for them, but if you're a cheap bastard like me and you get your cotton buds at the dollar store, they have extra fluffies on them. So I don't use them. I just use my old paintbrush that I use to apply it. Just roll it around, get the air bubbles out, get the fluff out of there. There we go. Now, you can either wait for it to dry and then apply setting solution on top, or I just like to get it over with and do it right away. And there are many available. There's Microsol. Model Master used to make some. Of course, they don't exist anymore. Thank you very much. There's Mr. Mark Setter, Neo, whatever that means. Solvaset. This stuff is great for stubborn decals. This will soften concrete. And there's also Decal Strong, also very good. And there you have it. If there's any air bubbles in there, you can poke them with a pin or a tip of a hobby knife. Throw some more decal solvent on. Leave everything to dry for a few hours, maybe overnight. Wash off the decal solvent and the glue. Coat it with your favorite clear coat, and you're done. I'll build damn near anything if the mood strikes me. Cars, ships, AFVs, science fiction, spaceships, figures, you name it, I'll build it. But I am, and always have been, primarily an aircraft modeler. I love aircraft, and especially aircraft with propellers on. Them's my favorites, you betcha. Now, I will build the occasional kerosene burner. Sure, why not? What the hell, eh? But primarily anything from the dawn of aviation up to, let's say the 40s or 50s or civil aviation. If it's got a prop on, I like it. I'll build it. One of the things I like about those eras is that they often have radial engines. Radial engines are awesome. They look great. They sound great. Well, the real ones, the plastic ones, not so much. But you know what I mean. So the subject is kind of near and dear to my heart. Now, I notice a trend on YouTube. In fact, just about every video I've seen where the modeler's building a radial engined aircraft, and they paint it to look like this. Silver cylinders. No. This didn't come in till about 42 or 43, maybe even a little later. Before that, they were almost always like this. Black cylinders. Now, of course, I'm talking here your Allied engines. Subjects may differ. I'm talking about your, well, primarily American ones, your Wright Cyclones and your Pratt& and Whitneys and your Continentals. Black cylinders, gloss black push rods, gloss black rocker covers, gray crankcase. Not silver, black. I have a book here. Inherited this from my dad. It's called The Royal Air Force by Eric Sargent. Now, there's actually no copyright date in this, but judging by the text and the pictures, I would say about 42 or 43. And you'll notice in here, there is a picture of an American radial engine. It's a Wright Cyclone. Black cylinders, not natural metal. So, if you're modeling Jimmy Doolittle's GB Racer, you're going to want your engine to look like that. Modern reproductions, maybe not. Delmar Benjamin's excellent GB reproduction, cast metal cylinders. Sure. But I prefer the real thing. I prefer the Jimmy Doolittle version. Black cylinders. Okay? This. Not this. Remember when you were a kid and you'd save your allowance for weeks and weeks, maybe months, and as soon as you had enough money together, you'd race down to your local Zellers or Woolworths or Simpson Sears and plunk down your 89 cents for the latest Airfix or Matchbox kit. Then you'd race home and get that baby assembled as soon as you could. Ah, those were the days, weren't they? And 10 days later you had it crammed full of fireworks and blasted to smithereens. But I digress. Whenever you finished that build, there was always something left over, wasn't there? Something you never really bothered with. That's right. The instructions. Remember these things? Why did they even bother putting them in there? Nobody uses them. We still don't, right? Anyway, there is one thing in these instructions that may be of use. And I see a lot of people making this mistake even today, and it's one of the most basic modeling things. And it says right in there, and I quote, "Remember to scrape paint away from areas which will be cemented, as cement will not stick to paint." Now then, flash forward a few decades and here we are. You didn't read those instructions as a kid and you're sure as hell not going to read them now, are you? Come on, lads and lasses. Are we mice or modelers? We don't need no stinking instructions. Now, unfortunately, there's that one line that we kind of ignored, and we're probably still ignoring it now because we didn't know about it at the time, and, well, we don't know about it now either, and, well, here we are. You've got your latest project on the go. The Skrablotnik YS-3B1 Chihuahua Heavy Bomber. You're loving it. You've researched the crap out of this thing. You've got matches for the authentic Federal Standard purple and orange interior colors. You've got your super detailed cockpit ready to go. Your flight crew clad in their Scottish Air Force tartan uniforms. This is it, the moment you've been waiting for. Time to glue it together. Here we go. Hang on. What's wrong with this picture? Anyone? Yes. Correct. You haven't scraped the paint away from the mating surfaces. You've heard the saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, paint is the weakest link here. Sure, it's got a good adhesion to stick itself to the plastic, but without scraping it away, all you're doing is gluing paint to paint, and that's a pretty weak bond. It doesn't matter what type of glue you use, whether it's polystyrene cement, super glue, epoxy, a big wad of chewing gum, whatever. If you don't scrape that paint away, you're not going to get a good bond. So, using whatever method you like, sandpaper or hobby knife, I prefer a hobby knife, scrape the paint away from all the mating edges and the internal ones on both sides before you glue it together. And I found that even a little bit of paint in there can affect the bond, so make sure you get it all off. And then you're good to go. But even better than that, don't have paint there in the first place. Use a liquid masker along the edges or masking tape. I personally prefer Mr. Hobby, Mr. Masking Sol R. I wonder if there's a Mrs. Masking Sol. He must get very lonely. Or you can use Umbral Maskall, also good stuff. And finally, number 6 in my top 5 list of okay, well, this one's a bonus. Number 6, your workbenches are too freaking neat. I'm not buying it. I've seen you out there, pristine modeling benches, nary a speck of dust in sight, all the models tucked away into their boxes, paints on your custom-made shelving with the labels facing out so you can find the color you need right away, tools all 5S'd up on your pegboard. Sorry, not buying it. This unholy disaster is what a real modeler's workbench looks like. You gotta have at least 15 projects on the go. If it doesn't take you 10 minutes to find that hobby knife that you put down right here just a second ago, well, you're not trying hard enough. Come on, it was right here. Oh, son of a... And did you really think you were going to negotiate that mess without knocking over a bottle of glue at least once? Oh, fudge nuggets. So there you go. Stop being so darn neat. You're making me look bad. Okay, well, that pretty much wraps up this premiere video from the Warp Plastics Scale Modeling channel. Hope you liked it. There's going to be plenty more videos coming your way, so you know the drill. Subscribe, like, share, recommend, tell your friends. Jump up and down, bark like a dog. Do a little dance, make a little love get down tonight. See ya.
Bye-bye now.